"Can I borrow your shoes for my graduation?" the poor girl asked, her hands trembling as she clutched her worn-out sneakers, unaware that the man standing before her wasn't just anyone, but a CEO millionaire whose decisions could change lives in an instant. She looked at him with desperate hope, her dreams dangling by a thread, but he looked at her with a quiet intensity that made her heart skip, wondering if kindness or judgment would come first. He smiled faintly, but what he did next would shock everyone and leave her wondering if this stranger held the key to a life she'd only imagined. Who was he really beneath the tailored suit, and why did his eyes linger on her like he already knew her story? Could borrowing a pair of shoes really change everything for her? Or was this the beginning of something far bigger, far more unexpected than either of them could foresee? Rain had soaked the cracked sidewalks of Eastwood Avenue, turning the city's gutters into miniature rivers. Lila Dawson hugged her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders, wincing as her worn-out sneakers squelched with every step. Her scholarship barely covered tuition, and any extra money went to rent and groceries, leaving little for clothes, or anything resembling dignity. Today was different. Today was graduation, and she had promised herself she wouldn't show up in the ragged sneakers that had carried her through 4 grueling years of college. She had hoped, foolishly maybe, that a miracle would appear in time. She didn't expect the miracle to stand right in front of her, wearing an impeccably tailored suit that looked like it had been made for a magazine shoot, rather than a rainy street corner. Lila hesitated, glancing at the polished leather shoes he wore, the faint glint of a watch on his wrist catching the last drops of drizzle. She had no idea who he was, though something in the way he carried himself, calm, confident, powerful, made her stomach twist with both awe and apprehension. "Can I borrow your shoes for my graduation?" she asked, almost stumbling over the words. Her voice was barely audible over the city's rush of traffic and splashing tires. He tilted his head, studying her as if he had stepped out of a different world entirely. There was no impatience, no condescension, only curiosity, almost like a puzzle that had suddenly appeared in his path. "Borrow my shoes?" he echoed, the corner of his mouth twitching into a faint, amused smile. "Yes," Lila said, lowering her gaze to her sneakers. They're—" She trailed off, embarrassed, knowing that words couldn't fully explain the years of struggle, the nights of tears over tuition forms and part-time jobs, the exhaustion that clung to her bones. For a moment, the street seemed to pause. Pedestrians hurried by, indifferent, but in that tiny bubble of dripping rain and soft city noise, time slowed for the two of them. He nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly, but his eyes held a weight that made her heart race. "Why not?" he finally said, his voice calm, resonant. "But why me?" Lila blinked. I don't know, you look like someone who could help." She winced at the audacity of her words. She wasn't used to asking for help. Her mother had raised her on pride and perseverance, on the mantra that no one would hand her life to her on a silver platter. Yet here she was, standing barefoot at the edge of hope, her sneakers clinging desperately to her soaked socks. He chuckled softly, but there was something sharp in the laugh, like a knife wrapped in silk. "You think I'm someone who just gives things away?" His eyes flicked to the graduation cap peeking out from her backpack, the tassel slightly bent. "Or do you think I just happened to be in the right place at the right time?" Lila shook her head, the words catching in her throat. She didn't know. She only knew that something about him made her believe, just for a moment, that maybe luck could bend in her favor. She glanced at the expensive watch on his wrist, the shoes so polished they reflected the gray clouds above, and wondered, who was this man really? What story had brought him here to this street corner, to her? He bent down, and for a moment she thought he might mock her. Instead, he set his shoes beside hers, the glossy leather gleaming like a promise. "Try them," he said. "But remember, shoes can't carry your story." "You do." Lila hesitated, slipping her foot into the left shoe. It was almost too big, yet somehow perfect. She tried the right. It fit like it had been made for her. Warmth spread through her chest, a tiny spark of hope she hadn't felt in months. "Thank you," she whispered, not knowing if she should shake his hand, hug him, or just bow. Her life felt fragile in that moment, like a thin thread holding her dreams above a yawning abyss. He straightened, adjusting his cuffs, and for the first time, Lila noticed the air of authority that radiated from him. Not arrogance, but presence. He was someone who commanded attention without asking for it, someone whose decisions could move mountains, whose steps could change destinies, and she had just borrowed his shoes. "What's your name?" she asked, curiosity and fear mingling in her voice. He hesitated. "Some things are better left unknown." "For now," he said, a teasing edge in his tone, before turning and walking away, leaving Lila staring after him. Shoes far too perfect on her feet, heart racing, mind spinning. She didn't know it yet, but this encounter, so brief, so improbable, was about to unravel a life she thought she understood. Who was this man, really? Why did he let her wear his shoes? And could a single act of kindness, or something far more, really change her future forever? As the rain slowed to a drizzle, Lila took a careful step forward, each polished shoe sinking slightly into the puddled street. She had no idea that borrowing those shoes would be the first step into a world she had never imagined, and that the man who gave them to her was more than just a stranger with a generous heart. The morning sun peeked through the clouds, casting a pale glow on the campus as Lila Dawson walked toward the graduation hall, her borrowed shoes clicking softly on the stone pavement. Each step was surreal, a strange mixture of pride, anxiety, and disbelief. She could still feel the smooth leather of the shoes molding perfectly to her feet, and the memory of the stranger's eyes lingered like a whisper she couldn't shake. As she approached the hall, flashes of her past crowded her mind. 4 years ago, she had arrived on campus with a tattered backpack, her scholarship barely enough to cover tuition. She remembered sitting alone in the library for hours, poring over textbooks she couldn't afford to buy, borrowing notes from classmates who didn't even know her name. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "You have to make your own luck, Lila. No one will hand it to you." And she had tried, harder than anyone could see, fighting exhaustion, poverty, and the gnawing fear that she wouldn't make it. Inside the hall, laughter and chatter filled the air. Students in caps and gowns moved in clusters, their polished shoes and new outfits a stark reminder of the worlds Lila had navigated without. She felt a pang of insecurity, glancing down at the borrowed shoes. They weren't hers, not really, and yet they carried her forward, each step a fragile bridge between struggle and triumph. A sudden voice broke her thoughts. "Lila Dawson?" She turned, startled, and found herself looking into the eyes of a young professor, Dr. Aaron Michaels, who had been her mentor through the toughest semesters. He was smiling, but there was concern beneath the surface, a curiosity about how the girl who had started on the fringes of campus life had made it to this moment. "You made it," he said, his tone carrying both admiration and disbelief. "I did," she replied softly, adjusting the gown that felt too large, too formal for someone who had spent 4 years barely scraping by. But as she spoke, she felt the shoes grounding her, a strange kind of courage that seemed to pulse from the leather up through her spine. Then she saw him, the man from the street. He was standing near the entrance, sharply dressed, calm, commanding attention without even trying. Lila's breath caught. He wasn't supposed to be here. She hadn't expected to see him again, yet here he was, watching. Something in the way he observed the crowd, scanning faces with a quiet intensity, told her he didn't belong in the casual chaos of graduation, yet he fit perfectly in a way she couldn't explain. Her mind raced. Who was he really? A CEO? A philanthropist? Or someone with secrets deeper than the city streets where they had met? She couldn't tell, and yet the way he looked at her made her pulse quicken. She felt exposed and seen at once. As the ceremony began, Lila sat, careful not to draw attention. The speeches blurred together, the applause echoing like a distant storm. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the stranger, the man who had lent her shoes. She remembered the soft chuckle, the edge in his voice, the unspoken promise of something more. Why had he done it? And why now, when she had just taken the first step toward the life she had fought for? Flashbacks invaded her mind, unbidden and vivid. Late nights in her small apartment, poring over assignments by candlelight because the electricity bill hadn't been paid. Days she had skipped meals to save money for books. Weeks of waiting tables, hands raw from scrubbing just to cover rent. And now, sitting in a borrowed pair of shoes, she was on the cusp of her dream. Yet the memory of him, the stranger who had appeared out of nowhere, made her question what was about to unfold. The ceremony reached its peak. Names were called. Degrees were handed over. Lila's name echoed through the hall, each syllable a drumbeat in her chest. She walked to the stage, head high, the borrowed shoes carrying her as if they were infused with purpose. As she received her diploma, her eyes scanned the crowd, searching for him. And then she saw it, a small nod, almost imperceptible, the corner of his mouth tilting into that same faint smile. He was still watching, still present, but distant, as though he were both part of her world and entirely outside it. After the ceremony, as students scattered in celebration, Lila found herself lingering by the fountain, shoes dripping slightly from the walk across the lawn. The stranger approached, and for the first time he spoke more than a few words. "You did well," he said simply, his voice low, calm, but carrying an undeniable weight. Most would have given up long before this moment. "Thank you," she replied, hesitant. I don't even know why you helped me." "Why those shoes?" He paused, watching her carefully as though measuring whether she could handle the truth. Sometimes the smallest gesture can change everything. Other times, it's the first step into a life that's been waiting for you to claim it. His eyes held a depth that made her heart skip. "Do you want that life, Lila?" The question hung in the air, heavy and charged. She wanted to nod, to say yes, but her instincts whispered caution. Who was he, really? What did he want from her? Yet something in her core stirred, a recognition that she had stumbled into a story bigger than her own, a narrative that had already begun before she even knew it existed. And just like that, the stranger turned, walking away without another word, leaving her alone by the fountain with a pounding heart, soaked shoes, and a million questions she didn't yet have answers for. Could she follow him into this unknown world? Was it luck, fate, or something more intricate that had brought them together? And most importantly, what did he truly want from her, and why had he appeared in her life at the precise moment she needed him most? Lila couldn't sleep that night. The borrowed shoes, now neatly placed by her small apartment door, felt like a talisman, a symbol of a world she hadn't thought possible. She kept replaying the moment on the street, the way he had looked at her, the quiet authority in his voice. Who was he really? And why had a stranger, someone clearly far above her station, taken such interest in a girl like her? The next morning, she returned to the campus courtyard, hoping for another glimpse of him, though she knew the odds were slim. The courtyard was bustling with graduates and their families, balloons and cameras everywhere, laughter and chatter blending into a single hum. Lila hugged her diploma close to her chest, trying to focus on the tangible victory she had fought for. Yet even in this triumph, the memory of the stranger lingered, a shadow woven into her joy. Her thoughts drifted back further to her childhood. She had grown up in a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper and a stubborn little kitchen that never seemed to stay warm. Her mother, single and exhausted, had worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table, instilling in Lila both resilience and quiet desperation. "You have to fight for every inch," her mother would say. "The world won't wait for you." Those words had carried her through late-night study sessions, overworked hands, and countless moments of doubt. And yet she had never imagined that help could come from the most unexpected source. A man she had met only once on a rainy street, offering shoes. A soft voice interrupted her memories. "Lila Dawson?" She turned sharply. There he was again, standing with the same calm, commanding presence that had unsettled her before. Only now the smile he gave wasn't fleeting. It held something deliberate, something intentional. He held a small envelope in his hand, the kind you didn't see every day, and it made her pulse quicken. "You left these behind," he said, extending it toward her. "Consider it an extension of our conversation yesterday." Lila hesitated, her fingers brushing the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note, elegant and concise. "Your courage is rare. If you're willing to take the next step, meet me at 9 a.m. tomorrow at the address below. Wear what you will, bring only yourself." She blinked, stunned. Her mind raced with questions. Was this a test? An opportunity? Or something else entirely? The stranger had already altered her path in a small, almost magical way. But this felt like the opening of a door she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. Sleep had given her no clarity that night, and now the dawn brought only more confusion. Lila wandered back to her tiny kitchen, staring at the peeling wallpaper, the faint smell of last night's coffee lingering in the air. Memories of scrubbing floors, balancing textbooks on her lap while working part-time, and the endless nights of silent tears resurfaced. Each struggle had prepared her for moments like this. Or had it? Could she trust someone she barely knew to shape her future? She remembered something her mother had once whispered late at night when bills stacked higher than hope. Sometimes help comes from places you least expect. Don't be afraid to take it, Lila, but make sure it doesn't cost who you are. Those words resonated now, echoing in the quiet apartment as if the universe had conspired to repeat them. The next morning arrived too quickly. Lila stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her outfit carefully. She had chosen something simple yet elegant. The borrowed shoes polished to a mirror shine, their fit now entirely familiar. Each glance at herself reflected not just the girl who had fought through hardship, but someone stepping into a world that might be bigger than she had ever imagined. The address on the note led her to a sleek building downtown, glass and steel shimmering under the morning sun. Her stomach fluttered, part anxiety, part anticipation. She checked the envelope again, feeling the weight of the unknown. What kind of man would invite her here? What did he truly want? And why did she feel inexplicably that everything she had fought for had led to this precise moment? The doors slid open silently as she stepped inside, the smell of polished wood and fresh leather greeting her. A receptionist glanced up, smiling faintly. "Mr. Callahan is expecting you," she said, gesturing toward a glass elevator. Lila's pulse quickened at the name Callahan. She realized she hadn't known his full identity until now, the very man who had lent her the shoes and changed the trajectory of her life was no ordinary stranger. As the elevator rose, she felt a swirl of emotions: excitement, fear, hope, and curiosity. She had entered a building that symbolized power, wealth, and influence, the kind she had never imagined inhabiting. And yet she couldn't shake the sense that he had orchestrated this moment for a reason beyond mere generosity. When the elevator doors opened, he was there, waiting. Dressed in the same sharp suit, his expression unreadable but his presence undeniable. "Welcome, Lila," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I've been hoping you'd come." Her heart raced. This was the moment she had both dreaded and hoped for. The borrowed shoes on her feet felt heavier now, not just with leather but with the weight of possibility. And as she stepped forward, she realized that nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. Lila stepped into the office, a breathtaking space of glass and steel that overlooked the city she had once walked with worn-out sneakers. The light reflected off every surface, casting a golden hue that made everything shimmer as if it were a world apart from the streets she had known. Mr. Callahan stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking every bit the CEO millionaire she had half imagined him to be. But now, even more human in a way she hadn't expected. "Sit," he said, gesturing toward a sleek leather chair. "We have much to discuss." Lila hesitated, then obeyed, feeling the gravity of the moment pressing on her chest. This was more than an encounter, more than borrowed shoes. It was a crossroads, a choice between the life she had clawed toward and a future that promised both opportunity and uncertainty. "I imagine you have questions," he began, his tone calm but deliberate. "About why I helped you, about why you're here, about me." She nodded, words failing her. He smiled faintly, a softness breaking through his otherwise commanding presence. "I've watched you for some time," he continued. "Not in the way people imagine a stranger watching, but I noticed your determination, your resilience, the way you fight for your life without asking for handouts. Most people never see that courage until it's too late. I wanted to test it, to see if you'd accept help when it came disguised as something as simple as shoes." Lila's pulse quickened. You knew who I was?" she whispered. The realization hit her like a thunderclap. This man, this stranger, had been aware of her struggles and her achievements long before they even spoke. "Of course," he said, walking toward a small table where a laptop displayed her academic records, her part-time jobs, even her volunteer work. "I believe in investing where potential meets perseverance. And you, Lila Dawson, have more potential than most people will ever recognize in a lifetime." Her hands trembled. The weight of what he was offering was almost too much to bear. Yet alongside the awe, a flicker of fear appeared. Why her? Why now? What did he expect in return? I don't understand," she said softly. "Why me? Why go through all this?" He leaned against the desk, looking out the window for a long moment before meeting her gaze. "Because sometimes the world doesn't just need talent, it needs courage. And courage alone isn't enough unless someone is willing to guide it, nurture it. I want to give you that guidance. A chance to step into a life you've only dreamed about. But you have to choose it yourself. No one can force it, Lila's mind raced. She thought of the nights she had cried over bills, the moments she had nearly given up, the endless hours of study, the weight of her mother's sacrifices. And now here was a man, a stranger offering a key to a world she had never imagined entering. Not because she begged for it, but because he saw something in her worth more than her circumstances. She swallowed hard. I want it, she said finally, voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. I want to try. I want to step into it. A smile spread across Mr. Callahan's face, genuine this time, and he extended a hand. Then let's begin. He handed her a folder, sleek and professional, detailing an opportunity that spanned mentorship, funding for projects she had only dreamed of, and a path into industries she had never dared consider. Lila's eyes widened, scanning the contents, feeling the enormity of what was being offered. It was everything she had ever wanted, wrapped in guidance, safety, and trust. And then almost quietly he said, "The shoes were just the beginning. Every step you've taken since then has led you here. Remember, it's not the shoes or me or luck, it's you who walks this path. Don't forget that." Tears sprang to her eyes, not just for the opportunity, but for the journey itself. The years of struggle, the nights of doubt, the endless fight for survival. And in that moment she realized that her life had shifted irreversibly. "Thank you," she whispered, voice breaking, "for believing in me when no one else could." He nodded. "Believe in yourself now, Lila. That's all you need." As she left the office later that day, shoes polished and borrowed no longer but a symbol of the path she had already walked, she felt a strange mixture of awe, gratitude, and determination. The city outside was the same as she had left it, yet everything had changed. Every corner held the memory of struggle and triumph. Every street echoed with possibility. And as she looked down at her shoes, she smiled. They were more than leather. They were a testament to courage, to kindness, to moments that could shift an entire life. The stranger, CEO, millionaire, mentor, had shown her a glimpse of what was possible, but it was she who had walked the path. The rain had passed. The sun shone. And Lila Dawson stepped forward into a life that promised everything she had fought for, and more than she had ever imagined.